Mick Abel. By the way, if you pay attention to betting odds, the red flag should have been flying on Saturday. Woke up, the Phillies were a slight favorite in that game on Saturday morning. By the time first pitch rolled around, the Mets were like minus 125 to minus 130 at most sports books. So the money had totally flipped throughout the day. They were due. Mets are a decent team. They had lost a ton of games consecutively. Mick Abel is not going to be a shutdown guy at this point in his career. It was a good spot for the Mets, and you kind of saw it unfold that way. And you and I were going back and forth, and I said, I don't love this tonight. I don't love this matchup. And you said, I don't think he's going to get through 5. And he did not. And he did not because he gave up 6 hits and 4 of them were home runs. And now this has become a problem. I guess, what did you see from Mick Abel the other night? I saw a guy that could not command his fastball.
Correct.
He's missing up and he's missing fat up, and he's not able to consistently keep it down. And you can go up top, but you got to execute it when you go up top.
And that's I'm glad you say it that way, because the game plan was for him to go up. Like they wanted, that was their game plan. They were trying to get the Mets out on aggressive swings up in the zone or above the zone. He just didn't get it up high enough. And as it turned out, like, he got rocked. So like he takes responsibility for that, you know, and good on him for doing that. And he didn't seem like a guy that was, you know, all in his own head after the game. I think we talked to him, and you could tell it was frustrating, but at the same time, I don't think it was one of those ones where he's going to go home and revisit pitch by pitch why it didn't work for him. You know what I'm saying?
Do you see a young pitcher who probably is just not going to be particularly effective, but is not a terrible stopgap solution as a 5th starter? Do you see a guy that's touching 98 and throwing 97 consistently with it and can snap off a decent curveball here and there and is kind of like a pitch away from being a pretty good starting pitcher? Like, what do you see? Because I don't know what I see, but I kind of feel like I do not see a long-term solution in the rotation being Mick Abel, at least. And when I say long-term, I mean this year. Like, I don't think we're destined for many more Mick Abel starts. I think we get to July, back half of July, and I think that's it. Whether or not they convert him to a reliever at that point, whether they trade him, I don't know what they're going to do, but I think that I don't want to say we got carried away. I don't think anyone really got carried away. I don't think anybody thought that Mick Abel is all of a sudden like staff ace. I see a guy that's kind of interesting, and he's in a tough spot, and he battles, and I think he's going to give you some good starts and some bad starts. I think what you've seen from him is exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah.
I see this comment here from Steve T about the tipping. Like, look, I'm not totally convinced that all of Jesus Luzardo's issues were about, tipping. I guess they got there and that became the story. I think that was part of it, maybe. I didn't see that at all the other night. I actually saw the Pitching Ninja video, and I think he's great. I don't know, man. I didn't see that.
Yeah, I didn't even know what he was highlighting in the tipping there. I was looking at it, I was like, what are we looking at here? I've had an issue with Mick Abel as far as being a length guy for a long time. Obviously he's got good stuff. It does play in the major leagues. But I always looked at it and said, even if he sticks as a starter, I'm not sure he's more than 5 and dive, right? Like I kind of think that's what he is in that role. Do I think he's got the stuff to translate to a bullpen role? I do. In fact, I think it really is something intriguing to the Phillies to think about, because, when you're throwing that hard and you do tend to keep the ball down, like, you can be really, really effective out of the bullpen. I don't think they want to put that out into the world prior to July 31. But if he's still here after July 31, I would not be surprised if that's what he's converted to. As far as how much time's left, Bob?
Well, okay, so let me ask it to you this way. Do you think that they will continue to pitch him out of the rotation because that is where they're going to show the most value to potential trade partners? Like, is that part of the consideration here? It's not just, And he's done a fine job. I'm not saying that on merit he should be bumped out of the rotation. So let me just say that. But is him sticking around through July 31st in the rotation more about we don't want to diminish his value? And in the same breath, if you are going to turn to him as a potential solution to this bullpen fiasco, wouldn't you want to kind of know what he's able to do in that role prior to the deadline? Like, don't you run some risk saying, okay, the deadline has now passed us by. Let's begin this experiment. Or is there enough in his game that you can just say, I don't need to see it play out. I just know we just feel it's going to work. We don't need to see it.
No,
How do you massage all these things?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I was going to say that I feel like Mick Abel's leash as a starter, at least for now, is much shorter than maybe people think. And I find it really intriguing that they're keeping Abel and Painter pitching on the same days. I know Painter didn't have a great outing. He was a little all over the place. I mean, he only gave up 2 runs.
Yeah, 4 walks. He got out of a bases loaded jam in the 5th inning, his final inning, to kind of limit the damage there, which there's something to be said for that. But it hasn't been lights out, smooth. Wow, he's ready to go. Why aren't they bringing him up? What more does he need to show? You know how that happens with prospects. What more can he show you? Well, the answer is quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, but I find it interesting that that's still the case. And I also find it interesting, even though we had Nola on last week and he said that, it's going to take him a while to ramp back up. He threw in the cage this weekend. He's going to throw on flat ground in Houston tomorrow. And I'm wondering if they're looking at it saying, hey, maybe we can get him back sooner, because neither of them, like Abel, we're not 100% confident in, and Painter just might be not ready yet.
What did you make of the comments over the weekend? I know you guys at On Pattison had the story, we're going to make him earn the promotion was the gist of what was said. Is that sending a message to him that you're not earning it? Is it so that he doesn't arrive and look overly pampered by the organization? Like, what did you make of those comments? Like, why would that get said? Did you read anything deeper into it?
No, I looked at it as saying, even though there was a plan for this guy, the plan still requires him to be pitching well. Like, he's not going to just go down there, kind of meander through a dozen starts and be like, all right, call me up. It's July. Like, I think they want that. I think the last box to be checked for Andrew Painter is to have a dominant performance at the AAA level. And when I mean dominant, I don't just mean like a 3-inning short outing. I mean, go out there, throw 90 out 100 to 100 pitches, shut a team down that they can't touch you, and just go out there and shove, right? And I think that's the thing that they want to see. He just hasn't quite given them that. He's been good. I don't want to diminish what he's done. He's been very good at AAA, but he hasn't been to the point where it's like he's too good for AAA, right? I mean, and I think a lot of times that's what you need it to be. So in the interim, what do you do? I mean, there's always the possibility that they could call up somebody else to make a spot start or whatever the case might be. And if they don't feel Painter's ready. But yeah, I don't think Mick Abel gets many more starts. I think it was last week's episode when I said they're going to reassess after the next 2 starts. He's going to start against the Mets. He's going to start against the Braves. Well, the Mets start was not a good one. No. So now he's going to start against the Braves. Actually, originally he was supposed to start against Houston. He's getting pushed back a day to start against the Braves. Let's see what that looks like. And then if he struggles again in Atlanta, then I think there's a conversation of, do we put somebody else in that spot in the rotation?
It's interesting. It's one of these things where it is still like a luxury almost. Where you're talking about the 5th starter. It's not like it's been a disaster. He's given them some good starts. They have obviously a really intriguing option in Andrew Painter waiting, potentially knocking on the door. And then, oh, by the way, you have Aaron Nola, who you're, highly invested in and has a pedigree and has had success. And they have options. I don't think this is the thing that prevents them from winning the World Series or anything like that. But it is something to kind of keep an eye on. And it's really important because you want to get that spot solidified. You want to know what you have in Mick Abel in 25. Like, what role does he fill? And is that to get a player here? Is that to patch up a hole in the bullpen? Like, what is it with Mick Abel? And then beyond that, there's just a lot of moving parts in that situation. And that's why, to me, like, a lot of times I don't go crazy about the 26-man roster and roster configuration. But in this particular instance, I think it's probably the most fascinating story in real time with this team.